The F-14 Tomcat is one of the legendary fighter jets of the U.S. military, put into service in 1971. Thanks to Hollywood movies like Top Gun, directed by Tony Scott in 1986, the F-14 became an icon of American military might around the world. The film not only presented the U.S. military in an outstanding manner, but also elevated the F-14 Tomcat to a glorious status. On the U.S. Military Summary channel, we will explore the F-14 Tomcat and discover its features, structure, and drawbacks. The Grumman F-14 Tomcat, also known as the Tomcat, is a supersonic swing-wing fighter aircraft with 2 seats and 2 engines. Throughout its service in the United States from 1972 to 2006, it was used as a fighter interceptor aircraft, reconnaissance platform, bomber, and air superiority fighter. Production began in 1969 and continued until 1991 with a total of 712 F-14s built. However, after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, the U.S. Navy was at a crossroads. Without the threatening shadow of Russian bombers to confront, the powerful F-14 became a jobless warrior. In 2006, the F-14 was gradually phased out and replaced with the cheaper Boeing FA-18EF Super Hornet. But for the public, the Tomcat is better known through the 1986 film Top Gun, directed by Tony Scott, which depicts a highly skilled fighter pilot flying a combat aircraft on an aircraft carrier, played by Tom Cruise as a top-performing student at the U.S. Naval Academy. The Grumman F-14 Tomcat is a fighter aircraft from the 1970s that is still relevant today. In August 1981, in the northern part of Libya in the Mediterranean Sea, the U.S. Air Force destroyed Libyan fighter pilots. For the Grumman F-14 Tomcat, this was the first success in air combat, and thus began the story of the aircraft that became one of America's most famous fighters in history. Accordingly, the U.S. Navy needed an aircraft that could take off and land when needed on an aircraft carrier at maximum speed, but with the weight and agility of an interceptor fighter. The result was an aircraft with a shape-changing wing that maximizes lift during takeoff and minimizes drag during high-speed flight. The U.S. Navy liked Grumman Aerospace Corporation's project so much that they decided to completely skip the prototype phase, starting production in 1969 and receiving the first new F-14s in 1972. The Grumman F-14 was named to honor Admiral Thomas Colony, who was the most enthusiastic supporter of the new aircraft and did everything to expedite the development process. The 4th-generation, twin-engine, carrier-based, multi-role interceptor fighter with variable sweep-wing configuration can reach speeds of over Mach 1 at sea level and over Mach 2.3 at altitude thanks to the General Electric F-110 GE400 with afterburner. In addition, the F-14 can fly about 2,500 kilometers without refueling, but experts believe the combat range is 1,600 kilometers. The aircraft can track 24 enemy aircraft 315 kilometers away using the X-band pulse Doppler radar AWG-9, which uses one of the first microprocessors to appear on fighter planes at the time. The powerful systems on the aircraft can even direct long-range missiles at 6 separate targets simultaneously without losing track of the remaining targets. In addition, the F-14's weapons are reliable with many options for different types of targets and ranges. With a total of 10 weapon attachment points, the F-14 can carry a variety of missiles and bombs, including the AIM-54 Phoenix, AIM-7 Sparrow, AIM-9 Sidewinder, and AGM-65 Maverick missiles. When the Gulf War broke out, Iraqi fighter jets tried to avoid engaging the F-14s due to their fearsome reputation in air-to-air combat, leaving the F-14s to fly aimlessly. Worse still, an F-14 Tomcat from the U.S. Navy was shot down by an Iraqi SA-2 surface-to-air missile. The U.S. Navy began to realize that maintaining a dominant fighter jet fleet on aircraft carriers was not only no longer necessary, but also too costly. With maintenance costs too high and difficulty in controlling compared to newer generations, such as the F-18 Hornet and the newer Super Hornet, the F-14 was officially retired in 2006 and completely replaced by the Super Hornet, which was designed for ground attack and, although slower, much cheaper. Before the Islamic Revolution in Iran in the late 1970s, the United States had sold 79 Tomcats to the Iranian Empire, and it is now believed that only 12 of them are still operable. However, the US wanted to ensure that none of the remaining F-14s fell into the hands of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The solution was for the US Navy to send most of the remaining F-14s through a process of being shredded and crushed, a tragic end for an iconic aircraft. The F-14 Tomcat is one of the legendary fighter jets of the United States, but it also has some weaknesses. In movies, the F-14 is portrayed as an ideal aircraft that always wins, but in reality, many American pilots call it turkey because it is bulky and slow. Firstly, the age of the aircraft is a weakness. The F-14 was designed in the 1960s and entered service in 1974, so some of its parts have become outdated and need to be replaced to continue using it. Another weakness is the high operating cost. Operating the F-14 Tomcat requires a lot of money because it has many complex parts and requires frequent maintenance. This can pose difficulties for countries with limited military budgets. After every hour of flight, the F-14 requires up to 40 hours of maintenance, which is 4 times higher than the F-18, another type of US fighter jet. In addition, the F-14 also has a slower speed compared to many other modern aircraft. Its maximum speed is 2,485 km per hour, slower than competing rivals like the F-15 or F-16. Moreover, the aircraft cannot fly at low altitude or access difficult terrain, thereby limiting its combat capabilities. Its engine is unreliable and has a troubled history. Pilots have criticized the TF-30 engine for not being powerful enough and not being trustworthy, with about 110 Class A mishaps that caused fatalities or damage worth millions of dollars, or both, occurring in the F-14A models, and half of which occurred during landings as of 1995. In a 1976 naval engineering publication, Admiral John Christensen wrote that the F-14 had serious problems with the engine. The TF-30 engine is extremely sensitive to airflow, and many incidents have occurred in the compressor stage. Finally, the F-14 cannot carry some of the latest weapons, which limits its combat capabilities. These are all weaknesses of the F-14 Tomcat that countries using this aircraft need to consider before making a decision to use it. The F-14 completed its mission when it was withdrawn from the Navy's inventory. A small number were retained in service until 2008, but also faced many challenges. By 2005, all F-14A and F-14B aircraft had been retired, leaving only 2 squadrons, VF-31 Tomcatters and VF-213 Black Lions, with the F-14D model serving until March 10, 2006 at Naval Air Station Oceana. The F-14's final mission was on February 8, 2006, when 2 aircraft took off from the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt to carry out bombing missions in Iraq. The last aircraft to drop bombs were F-14Ds, flown by Lieutenant Commander Bill Frank of VF-31 and Lieutenant William G. Sizemore of VF-213. During the deployment abroad, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, VF-31, and VF-213 completed 1,163 sorties with a total of 6,876 flight hours, using 9,500 pounds of ordnance in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. On March 10, 2006, 22 F-14s landed at Naval Air Station Oceana, marking the final combat formation of the F-14. The F-14 pilots and radar intercept officers were transitioned to the FA-18. After September 22, 2006, the F-14s were sent to the Davis Mountain Boneyard for retirement. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you like this video, Please like and sub to our channel to stay uploaded on the latest videos about history and military. See you again in the next videos. Goodbye.